SAS interview question and answer. Question number 52. Can you explain a situation where you have used Proc SQL select into clause to create macro variable? This question is asking about where can we use Proc SQL select into clause method to create macro variable. If you have previous experience, can you please explain it? If we need to use certain value or values from the variable of a table to further processing steps, then we can change that value to macro variable value and use it back where necessary. One of the previous work experience is explained here. While updating master data table, if the code runs successfully, then process status code change to dot. If the program throws error, then process status code change to corresponding number. That number represents certain type of the error. In such a scenario, after fixing error, we need to change number to 0. That means it is ready to new run. Sometimes it is not efficient to go to check MDT process status table, identify corresponding ID and change the status code. In this situation, it is better to run just a below code that changes the status where it has used Proc SQL select into clause to create macro variable. From left side table, the table name is MDT process status table. It has two columns, one is ID, another one is process status code. Where one of the ID 231 corresponds to number process status code 44. That means it is showing some type of the error. Then after fixing this error, we have to change this 44 number to 0. In such a scenario, we use Proc SQL select into clause. First step, we are going to change this value 231 value to value of macro variable value. In this first step, Proc SQL select ID into proc underscore ID, where proc underscore ID is macro variable name. From drj.mdt underscore process underscore status, that means drj is permanent library where mdt process status is table name, and we are using where condition where process status code not in dot and 0. That means we are going to identify the process status code equals to certain number and quit. Next step, we are going to print value of this macro variable in our log window. That's why we use %put ampersand proc underscore ID. Proc underscore ID, that is the variable macro variable name. When we use ampersand proc underscore ID dot, that means we are calling that macro variable here. When we run first set of the code, then it will create or it will convert this ID value 231 to the value of proc underscore ID macro variable value. The next step, now calling and using macro variable value. Proc SQL, we are going to update this table drj.mdt process status table and set process status code equals to 0 where ID equals to ampersand proc underscore ID. That means where ID equals to value of this macro variable value, which is 231. That means we are going to change this row. When value of ID is 231, that change the status code to 0. That means we are going to change this 44 to 0. After running the second set of the code, then this table will change to as shown on the right side. That means 231 value ID correspond to process status code to 0. It has changed 44 to 0. If we run same set of the code with a SAS window, then we will get exactly same result. We have the two set of the code. Before running this code, let me check MDT process status code first. That code is inside TRJ library and the table name is MDT process status. Let me check that table where ID 231 corresponds to number 44, process status code 44. That means we have to change after fixing error this value 44 to 0 value. Let me go back to the code and run this process step. That means we are selecting ID and we are going to convert that ID value to macro variable value where macro variable name is proc_id and we are going to display that value in our log window. Let me check first one. Then let me check log. Then here %proc_id, that value is here 231. This is the value of macro variable value. Let me go back to the code, then run second part of the code. That will change to 0, 44 to 0. From the log window, it says here one row was updated in drj.mdt process status table. That means it has changed. Let me cancel previous data first. Refresh it. Now I am going to check that table, drj library, going back to mdt process status table. Initially this value was 44. Now it has changed to 0. That means we have changed 44 value to 0 value. In this way, if we need to use certain value or values from a table to proceed to further steps, then we can use ProcSQL select into clause method to create macro variable and use its value for the processing steps. That's all about question number 52. Thank you.